Hey everybody, Small G Gay again. I'm doing comic reviews of the new DC New 52, even though I know that my audience probably isn't that into this, but I have some of you who are, and I'm going to do it anyway. The next new DC comic that I read and am reviewing is Batgirl. Now, Gail Simone has taken over Batgirl. Batgirl has a horrible history. Batgirl was a terrific character in the DC universe. She's one of my favorites as a child. I loved the Batman TV series, and I loved Yvonne Craig. I loved Batgirl all through the 60s and 70s. I used to read Batgirl and Batman Family in the 70s. I loved Barbara Gordon. I've always kind of fancied myself a real-life Barbara Gordon. And, a lot of people call me Barbara Gordon, and that I have that kind of Barbara Gordon personality. Then in the 80s, when they decided to go all dark, around the time of the crisis, Alan Moore did a comic book called The Killing Joke, wherein the Joker shot Batgirl in the stomach and made her a disabled person, made her a paraplegic. And she took on a new role as Oracle in Birds of Prey, and she was like Perry Mason. She was like in the wheelchair. But then she was also a computer genius, so she'd figure things out, and so she'd like unlock the doors at the secret installation so that the birds of prey could go in, kind of deal. And they kept her in a wheelchair for almost 30 years. She's been in a wheelchair more than she was Batgirl, and they did it for political correctness. Batgirl had to suffer, even though in the DC universe they could have long revived her. She had to suffer for the sake of other people who couldn't walk. They nailed her to a chair, like Harrison Bergeron, to be an example for girls in wheelchairs, apparently, which is kind of perverse and weird. But now Gail Simone has taken over, and this is one of the big things that they're touting, is that Batgirl is back. It's odd. I thought, again, parts of this I liked. I liked Gail Simone's obvious affection for Batgirl. She was not as dark as the other characters. She seemed to be more normal, relatively normal. It's odd in that the past 3 decades, since it's been 3 decades since Batgirl could walk, but in the comics it's been 3 years. Again, it points to the fact that the Batman continuity has lasted much longer than the other superheroes, because Superman is just now becoming Superman, but Batgirl already has this long history. She's like a founding character now. And her entire period in the wheelchair was 3 years. Again, more weirdness. It seems that the Killing Joke, which was such a continuity problem before, still exists. She has a flashback to Killing Joke in this comic. It's supposed to be her big comeback, but it looks like she's got so many psychological problems from the Killing Joke still that it prevents her from being an effective superheroine. I don't know how feminist that is. And here's the real hideous part. Barbara Gordon moves in with this radical who wants to fight the power, this radical Asian lesbian. She's not a lesbian, but she seems like we don't know what she is. I'm sure she is a lesbian. And she goes, I'm kind of like, radical. And Batgirl and her new lesbian roommate do a fist bump. So they still have to make it very clear that Batgirl is a communist. There you go, America! Even so, I'll probably reread Batgirl the next issue just because I like Batgirl. She fights a character called the Mirror, and he's boring. Next, Justice League International. Now, this comic book was unusual in that it seemed, of all of them, I have to give my face a scratch, it seemed of all of them to be the only one that was aware of other politics besides left-wing politics. However, it being produced, I'm sure, by New York City writers, was still hideously misguided. In this continuity, see, again, there's all these different continuities. In this continuity, the Justice League has been around for a long time. Remember, last week, the Justice League just started. The first 2 members of the future Justice League just met, but in this continuity, it's been around for a long time. And the UN now wants to form their own version of the Justice League to deal with issues that only they can deal with. So this is like a new world order Justice League. It's obviously trying to be like the 80s Justice League International. Also like the 80s Justice League, the Keith Giffen Justice League. It's got that kind of sarcastic, everyone's a smart-ass kind of attitude. Rocket Red is a member. Apparently, there's still a Soviet Union in this world. It's hideously PC, which means, of course, it's incredibly racist. That is a woman from Africa. The Fire from Rio is described as having a fiery Latin personality, you know. Godiva's in it, Godiva is a Medusa ripoff, but she has the best line in the entire comic when she tells Batman to sod off. She says, "Sod off, Bat." That was the best line in any of the New 52. And this ice lesbian, who cares? And Guy Gardner's in it. Guy Gardner's not right wing though. He doesn't seem to have anything. And Booster Gold, again, another who cares character. And this guy, who even knows? He's red Chinese. But Batman thinks that the UN is up to something. So the UN is not completely good in this one. And they kind of bowed to Tea Party a little bit in this one by making it kind of Alex Jones, like it's a new world order and the UN can't be trusted. Their headquarters was supposed to be the Hall of Justice. Again, the Super Friends exist in this universe. And the Super Friends have been a long time, even though Superman is just now becoming Superman. More continuity weirdness. And, but there's like a Tea Party-like group. Now, the good news is they have a black guy in it. The bad news is guess what? They're terrorists and arsonists, and the Tea Party burns down the Hall of Justice in Justice League International to get back at the UN. Another fine left-wing Marxist diatribe from corporate DC, crony capitalist, welfare, corporate welfare queen, media giant monstrosity. Now, the next comic is Swamp Thing. The comic book guy said that this is the best one. I have to say this is probably the best written of any of the comics. Who wrote this? Scott Snyder, and the artwork was quite good. It's really slow moving though. Superman is again Superman already here with his full costume. Get this. They show the Justice League in the beginning. The Clark Kent in this Justice League is the same old Clark Kent. It's the same pre-New 52 Justice League. More continuity nightmare from DC. You can always count on DC for more of their corporate communist nonsense. And this one's a green comic, of course, and there's lots of stuff about flowers crying when you cut them, and hand wringing. Oh, it's Silent Spring. It's a real eco deal. That said, it did have some atmosphere. I thought that there's some kind of old school Steve Bissette, Alan Moore stuff going on. It's a little confusing. Alec Holland is back, and that we know that Arcane's daughter, what was her name, Abigail Arcane, is definitely around because he's having dreams of a woman with white hair. Again, it looks like the Swamp Thing continuity happened, and that Superman has known Swamp Thing for a long time, even though Superman is just now becoming Superman. What can you say about DC Comics? This one is still one of the better ones, and I would give it a B. Next, Animal Man. Now, the comic book guy at the shop said that this is the best one of all. You can tell by the cover that it's very adolescent in its stance. Animal Man is an actor and a superhero and an animal rights activist. And he has the ability to bond with animals and take on animal roles. So he's connected to all the animals that you Republicans don't care if they live or die. The artwork in this was really interesting, kind of a raw magazine kind of way, and kind of an indie kind of way. It opens up with an artistic type, setup where it's an interview, an endless interview that's so tedious with this guy. He's supposedly so popular with his left-wing animal rights politics that all the hip young college kids wear Animal Man T-shirts. I love how, but at the same time, it's crap through and through because he puts on his Animal Man costume when there's a problem, and it's like, I know it's so corny that I'm Animal Man. It's just like, why? Just because you're a franchise character that they're trying to update, who would have that problem? Why would you even call yourself Animal Man? Just because you had the power to connect to animals, why would you even tell people that? Why would you broadcast that? You know, if you got a corny costume, why don't you wear a normal costume? Instead, they've got this, like, hideous back continuity. Again, it seems that the Animal Man continuity is still the same as it always was. As far as I can tell. I mean, he's got this long history, whereas other characters are just being hatched for the first time. It's another mess. I don't think there was much connection with the regular DC universe. There's a hideous dream sequence. The entire thing seems to be written under the influence of marijuana. And there's a lot of preaching in it. The villains are called the Hunters. We know what that's going to mean. This is going to be an anti-hunting comic book. I wish to God that I could pick up a comic book, period, that wasn't some kind of leftist screed. There you are, America. Still, I would give it, because of the artwork and the creativity of some of the design, I would still give it a B. But so the last two were the best ones. We'll see what happens with DC. I don't have high hopes. And something that's interesting I looked at the next issues of these new earth-shaking comics, and they all look like more of the same. I'm actually kind of more of the same kind of garbage, you know, and it's just like, who cares about these characters? There's a new push to make it non-stop action, but it's so hyperkinetic that you don't even have time to think. Maybe it's for, like, Lady Gaga fans or something that can't focus on one single melody long enough. I do like the occult aspect that they're emphasizing with some of the new occult characters, so I'm still going to give it a chance. And Lesbian Batwoman. Hi, Kyle. Lesbian Batwoman. Hi, Kyle. The Lesbian Batwoman is coming out in a week, so I'll get that one as well and check that out. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's a mess. It's a big, hot, steaming DC continuity mess. Small G Gay. Love to all. Bye.